Hi there, hope you're well. In this video, I'll be giving a quick walk around the Aldi Ferrex bandsaw, possibly the cheapest 10-inch bandsaw you can buy, certainly here in the UK. Before we get to that, I just want to say a huge thank you to subscriber Parrot340, who asked me in the comments if I was going to be reviewing this saw, as the saws are back in stock in Aldi stores soon, so thanks so much to them for the reminder. Now, I bought this Ferrex bandsaw almost exactly a year ago. Like all Aldi special buys, they're only available for a limited time and in limited quantities, and I missed out on it on the previous year. So when it came up again last year, I jumped right on it as I was looking for an upgrade to my old Titan bandsaw. I paid about £150 for this saw, which makes it the cheapest new 10-inch bandsaw I've ever seen. And if you've followed my channel at all, you know that I've had a few bandsaws over the years, mostly smaller models of limited capacity. My previous Titan saw was a slight oddball in that it was a 9-inch bandsaw, so it had more space at the throat between the blade and the column, but only the same 80 millimeters of cutting height of the previous 8-inch or 200mm saws that I'd had. As I say, this Aldi Ferrex is a 10-inch or 250mm saw, so let me quickly run you through the specs on this machine. Now, as I've mentioned in previous videos, and incidentally there's a playlist with all my previous bandsaw adventures on it, I'll link that up down below. As I've said before, bandsaws can be pretty samey because there's only so much you can do with two wheels, a motor, a frame and a table. And to be honest, this one is no different in that regard. It's a standard issue frame that's all steel and stands about 820mm high. It's about 400mm deep from the back of the motor housing to the front of the table, and about the same from the column to the edge of the table. The table itself is all aluminium and has a solid fence that locks securely at the front and rear, but lifts off cleanly once released, so it's easy to move to the other side of the blade if you need. You don't have to slide it off as I had to do with my aftermarket fence on my old Titan, for example, which could be a bit of a pain and simply made me not want to change blades. There's a mitre fence supplied with the saw that's okay. It's a little sloppy in the slot, but it's perfectly usable. And the table itself has a neat trick in that it can extend out to almost 500mm or 20 inches to give you support for wider boards, or giving a maximum cut of around 330mm or 13 inches with the fence at the right hand side of the blade. The bandsaw's powered by an induction motor. I don't think I've ever seen one that wasn't, to be honest, that's rated at 550 watts for S1 or intermittent use and 420 watts at S2 continuous use. The 10-inch aluminium wheels give a maximum cut of around 9.5 inches, 240mm or so at the throat, and a useful maximum cutting height of 120mm, just short of 5 inches. Now, most of the time I've been using this saw for cutting my usual selection of sheet materials, but as my Patreon supporters and YouTube members may know, I've also used it to cut cubes off a 4 3/4 inch sawn piece of timber for an in-house project here in the building when I was making a stand to take a safe that weighed 500 kilos, and the saw's behaved perfectly over the last year without any issues at all, aside from one little niggle after setup, which we'll come back to later. In fact, since I set the saw up, I've barely touched it other than give it the occasional hoover out, something it could probably do with again, to be perfectly honest. I'm not going to get into the detailed setup of this. If you need that, then have a search for an Alex Snodgrass video on bandsaw setup. There are plenty of those around. And my YouTube pal James from James's Man Cave did a great unboxing and setup video of this particular saw. I'll link those up down below. So I'm just going to run through the absolute basics. And one thing I have done here with my saw is to change the blade. The supply blade is 3/8 of an inch. It fits the saw and it has teeth, but that's just about all I could say about it, to be perfectly honest. So I swapped this blade out pretty fast. The Ferrex is just capable of taking a 1/2 inch blade, and I have managed to shoehorn one in. I fitted a Tough Saws Super Tough Premium something or other. I'll put a link down below, but other fine blades are available, of course, from other manufacturers. And make no mistake, a good blade will make a huge difference to the ease of setup, especially if you're relatively new to bandsaws. Like all bandsaws, with the blade threaded around and settled onto the wheels and tensioned, you need to set the guides. On cheaper bandsaws, the guides are often simple friction bearings, but here the upper and lower guides are roller bearings, as is the thrust bearing at the rear. And these can be easily adjusted with the supplied spanners and Allen keys so that they're almost but not quite touching the blade. I found a 10mm socket was also handy for adjusting the thrust bearing, as it was a little tricky to get a spanner in there, and I also found it much easier to adjust the bottom bearings with the table out of the way. In fact, I removed it completely, adjusted the bearings and then refitted it. It made that much of a difference, so do bear that in mind before you rush to fit the table. The table adjustment is a little crude if I'm honest, but I rarely tilt the table, so it's not really an issue for me, and the table was easily levelled by using a standard set screw from underneath. Elsewhere around the saw, the wheel covers are all metal and have a coin slot style quick release catches, and both are fitted with micro switches to prevent the saw from running with either door open. Like most bandsaws, dust collection is nothing to write home about, but it is good to see two outlets, two attachments for a hose, one on the side and one to the rear. And the saw has the usual NVR switch on the column for power. All in all then, this is a pretty solid package for the money. As I think I said earlier, it's the cheapest 10-inch bandsaw I've seen by far. So you might expect me to be thrilled with it and recommending it almost without question. Actually, I almost returned it after unboxing it and setting up because I was getting such bad vibration from it that it was almost unusable. And the only reason I didn't was because I'd left it so long before I opened the box that they were actually out of stock, so I'd be returning it for a refund, not for replacement. The vibration was helped tremendously simply by fitting a new blade, but the thing that made the most difference were these pack of 4 erasers placed under the corners of the base. Genuinely, that made a world of difference. And before you say it, no, there weren't any rubber feet supplied with it. No, I didn't leave them in the box and throw them out. And yes, I have since bought some rubber feet for the saw. I just haven't fitted them yet. Now, I'm not aware of anyone else reporting bad vibration issues with this particular saw, so I'm just chalking it down as one of those things, accepting my Office Essentials fix for the problem and getting on with using the saw and enjoying the extra capacity. There was one other slight quirk. There's a little stop bolt under the table extension to prevent you from accidentally pulling the table off the rails, but that sticks down far enough that it fouls the bottom door when it's opened. My solution was simply to leave this bolt off and remember not to yank the table out too far if I ever needed to extend it. So that's my experience with Aldi's 10-inch Ferrex bandsaw over the last year or so. Great value for money, cuts really well. Just upgrade the blade and buy yourself a pack of erasers. The saw's back in Aldi stores very soon, so keep your eyes peeled for that. It appears to have a different paint job this year, but seems to be visually identical in all other regards. But as always, if you spot any differences, then let me know down in the comments below. And at the risk of stating the obvious, the saw I've been discussing here today is last year's model. I can't guarantee that it's identical to the model that you'll buy this year, so if certain aspects are important to you, then do check carefully with the specifications offered online at Aldi. But I'll leave it there for this one though. Thanks so much for taking a look. Thanks as always to my YouTube members and Patreon pals whose continued support helps me to keep the lights on here and whose conversations help me to shape these public facing videos on the channel. But that's it for this one. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, take care.